Hi everyone, welcome to virtual lesson number 25. This is the start of our final unit of the year, and this is our probability unit, and our first lesson is on events and outcome. So first I need to teach you some new vocab words. A situation involving chances that lead to various outcomes. That is what we call an experiment, something you're used to because of science class. All possible results of an experiment are called outcomes. So anything at all that could possibly happen as a result to doing the experiment is referred to as an outcome. Number 3, a collection of possible outcomes is referred to as an event. And number 4, the outcomes of a specific event are referred to as the number of favorable outcomes. Okay, so here's an example. You are going to identify the experiment, outcomes, event, and favorable outcomes for this situation. If you're rolling a 6-sided dice, what are the odds of rolling a 5? So first things first, your experiment is just the fact that you are rolling a dice. The possible outcomes are anything that you could possibly roll. So on a regular 6-sided dice, you can roll a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6. Those are all the possible outcomes. The event is you rolling a 5 because that's our ultimate goal. And the number of favorable outcomes, so there's only one favorable outcome because the favorable outcome is the thing that you're trying to figure out what the chances of it are rolling. If we're talking about the chances of rolling a 5, well, there's only one 5 on the dice. So there's only one favorable outcome. And you see it, if you look at the list of outcomes, you see the 5 listed once. So that's where the 1 comes from. Now, sometimes you could be asked, instead of the number of favorable outcomes, you might be asked, what are the favorable outcomes? When you're asked this question, the answer would be 5, because that is the favorable outcome you are looking for. But when you're asked what the number of the favorable outcomes is, that's 1, because there's only one possibility of rolling a 5. All right, so let's look at an example. Again, you are rolling a 6-sided dice. We already talked about number 1, what are the possible outcomes? So you could either roll a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6. Those are all the possible outcomes. Number 2, what are the favorable outcomes of rolling an odd number? Okay, so 1 is an odd number, 3, and 5. Now, again, this is not asking how many favorable outcomes there are. It's asking what they are. So 1 is one of the odd numbers, 3 and 5. Those are the favorable outcomes when it comes to rolling an odd number. The next question, what are the favorable outcomes for rolling a number greater than 3? 4 is greater than 3, 5, and 6. So you just list them, 4, 5, and 6. Again, it was asking what they were. If they were asking how many there were, then your answer would be 3. And the last question, what are the favorable outcomes of rolling a number less than 5? So that's 4, 3, 2, and 1 are all less than 5. So those are our answers because, again, it's asking what they are. It's not asking how many there are. Okay, next, if you were spinning this spinner that's on the left, is it possible to roll an odd number? Well, there's multiple odd numbers on the spinner, so the answer is yes, it is possible. Could you spin a number that is more than 5? If you take a look, the numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no number greater than 5 on this spinner, so that is not possible, so no. Could you spin a number less than 1? Again, the numbers on the spinner are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no number on here that is less than 1, so it's not possible, so the answer is no. Could you spin an even number? 2 is an even number and 4 is an even number. It is possible. Yes, you could. All right, our last example, flipping a coin. Is it possible to land on heads? Well, your only two options when flipping a coin is heads or tails. So yes, it is possible because it's one of the possible outcomes. Is it possible to land on tails? Yes, because again, that's one of our possible outcomes. If you flip the coin 100 times, how many times do you think you would land on heads? Now, for this question, think about your probability. There are only two options. So that's what we call a 50-50 chance. So because we're talking about flipping the coin 100 times, you would think that you would be able to land on heads about 50 times, exactly half of 100. It's not a guarantee, but because of the fact that it is a 50-50 chance, you would think that you would do it about 50 times because that's half. Because our chance is 50-50, or in other words, a 1 in 2 chance. If you flip the coin 100 times, how many times do you think you would land on tails? That is the same exact thing as the last question. It would be about 50 times because, again, you have a 50-50 chance, which means about half the time you should be landing on tails. Okay, that's it for this lesson. Now you can go ahead and answer the practice problems.